Welcome to Capital Catch-Up, your deep dive into the halls of Congress. I am Victor.
And I am Lainey. Today, we are unpacking a massive slate of legislative action, major administrative nominations, and the latest debates from the Senate floor. Let us start with the foundation of federal operations, the budget. House Concurrent Resolution 14 has been introduced to establish the congressional budget for the United States government for fiscal year 2025, while setting budgetary levels all the way through 2034.
That is a 10-year outlook, Lainey. This concurrent resolution outlines specific fiscal targets, like federal revenues, spending limits, and deficit levels. But what is really interesting are the mechanisms it uses. It includes provisions for reconciliation, which is a special legislative process that allows certain budget-related bills to pass with a simple majority in the Senate, bypassing the usual filibuster.
Exactly. It also sets up reserve funds focused on government deregulation, spending reductions, and protecting Medicare and Medicaid. The overall goal here is to enforce budgetary discipline while laying out long-term priorities. And speaking of long-term planning, defense spending is also front and center with House Resolution 8800, the National Defense Authorization Act for Fiscal Year 2027.
Yes, this is the massive annual defense policy bill. House Resolution 8800 focuses heavily on modernizing our military. It authorizes multi-year procurement for advanced naval and aerial platforms, specifically submarines, destroyers, and fighter aircraft. It also puts strategic limits on retiring older, legacy systems to make sure we do not leave any capability gaps.
And it is heavily forward-looking, investing in emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and unmanned systems. On the personnel side, it sets military end strength levels, reforms officer policies, and strengthens military justice and victim support services, especially regarding domestic violence and sexual misconduct. We also saw in the Senate Daily Records from June 17, 2026, that this defense bill includes a 3.6% pay raise for service members.
That pay raise is a direct pocketbook issue for military families. Now, let us shift from national defense to a major proposal addressing historical justice. Senate Bill 40, known as the Commission to Study and Develop Reparation Proposals for African Americans Act.
This bill proposes a 13-member commission to examine the history of slavery in the United States and its ongoing legacy of systemic racial and economic discrimination. It is a comprehensive mandate. The commission will document the impacts of slavery and subsequent discriminatory practices, like Jim Crow laws, redlining, and unequal access to education, on living African Americans.
It does not just look backward, though. The Commission is tasked with recommending remedies, which could include a formal national apology and proposals for reparations. To get this work done, the bill grants the Commission subpoena power to gather information, and they would have to submit a final report to Congress within 1 year of their first meeting.
It is a significant piece of legislation that could shape national conversations. On the economic and supply chain front, we have Senate Bill 97, the Securing Semiconductor Supply Chains Act. This bill is designed to boost domestic semiconductor manufacturing by attracting foreign direct investment.
Right, semiconductor shortages have been a major pain point for the American economy, affecting everything from cars to smartphones. Senate Bill 97 directs the Department of Commerce program called Select USA to work with state-level economic development organizations. They will identify investment barriers and find ways to bring critical supply chain segments back to the United States or diversify them.
And they have to do this in partnership with United States allies while ensuring foreign adversaries do not benefit. Interestingly, the bill requires Select USA to do all of this using existing resources, meaning no additional federal funding is authorized.
That is a real test of efficiency. Now, let us look at infrastructure. House Resolution 9022 is the Energy and Water Development and Related Agencies Appropriations Act for 2027. It funds the United States Army Corps of Engineers and the Department of the Interior.
This bill allocates substantial funding for civil works projects. We are talking about flood and storm damage reduction, harbor maintenance, and ecosystem restoration. For everyday Americans, this means keeping local waterways safe and functional. But the bill also keeps a tight leash on the executive branch, limiting the Army's ability to reprogram funds without congressional approval and protecting public access to project data. It even has a provision allowing firearm possession at water resource development projects in accordance with state law.
That is a notable detail. Let us talk about how Congress is looking at its own agencies. House Resolution 6028, the Legislative Branch Agencies Clarification Act, introduces some major structural reforms. It creates a new commission made up of House and Senate leadership to oversee the nonpartisan appointment and removal of the Librarian of Congress and the Director of the Government Publishing Office.
It also gives the United States Copyright Office much more independence. It removes the supervisory authority of the Library of Congress and transfers those responsibilities directly to the Register of Copyrights, who will now be appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate.
Moving from the library to the skies, House Resolution 3196, the Improving Helicopter Safety Act of 2025, proposes a federal ban on non-essential civil helicopter flights within a 20-mile radius of the Statue of Liberty National Monument. This is aimed at improving safety and reducing noise disturbances, though it does exempt emergency, medical, law enforcement, and heavy-lift construction flights.
Let us also touch on House Resolution 1695, the Guarding Readiness Resources Act. This bipartisan bill changes how the National Guard Bureau handles reimbursement money from states and territories. When military property is used for state active duty operations, those reimbursed funds must go right back into the specific accounts that paid for them, and they can only be used to repair, maintain, or replace National Guard assets.
That keeps the resources where they are needed most. We also have Senate Bill 2585, the MAP for Broadband Funding Act. This directs the Federal Communications Commission and the National Telecommunications and Information Administration to look into how to improve the broadband funding map. The Government Accountability Office will also study how federal agencies coordinate broadband funding to prevent taxpayer money from being wasted or fragmented.
There is also a patriotic milestone on the horizon. Senate Bill 4828, the Declaration of Independence Reaffirmation Act of 2026, formally acknowledges the Declaration of Independence as an organic law of the United States. As we approach the nation's 250th anniversary, this act readopts the text to emphasize equal citizenship and government by consent.
On the scientific side, Senate Bill 4822, the Saving the OOI Act of 2026, steps in to protect ocean research. It orders the National Science Foundation to halt any plans to decommission or scale back the Ocean Observatory's initiative instruments off the coasts of Oregon, Washington, Alaska, North Carolina, and in the Erminger Sea. The scientific community and coastal residents must be consulted before any changes are made.
We also have several newly introduced House resolutions to note. House Resolution 9359 amends the Food and Nutrition Act of 2008 to ensure families can get their Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits reissued if they are stolen by identity theft or skimming. House Resolution 9371 requires disclosure when companies use personalized algorithmic pricing. House Resolution 9365 directs the Secretary of Health and Human Services to set up an office to help communities provide mental health services for fear-based trauma related to federal immigration enforcement. And House Resolution 9351 amends the Service Members Civil Relief Act to provide relief for military members who homeschool their dependent children.
Now, let us look at the executive branch nominations that the Senate is considering. There is a long list of key positions. For the United States Postal Service, we have Jeffrey Brodsky and William Gallo nominated to be governors. Bradford Pentony Wilson is nominated to be the Archivist of the United States.
Charlton Allen is nominated as General Counsel of the Federal Labor Relations Authority, and former Congressman George Holding is nominated to be the United States Director of the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development.
For the Department of Homeland Security, Brian Kavanaugh is nominated as Undersecretary for Management, and Cameron Hamilton is nominated to lead the Federal Emergency Management Agency. David Cummins is nominated to be the Administrator of the Transportation Security Administration.
We also see James Woodruff nominated as Chairman of the Merit Systems Protection Board, Don Richard Berthiaume Jr. nominated to be Inspector General of the Department of Justice, Hal Duncan nominated as Deputy Director of the Office of Management and Budget, and Charles Baldus nominated as Special Counsel.
And finally, former Representative Michelle Steele has been nominated to be the Ambassador to the Republic of Korea. Her nomination was a key topic during the Senate proceedings on June 17, 2026.
That Senate session was quite eventful, Victor. Alongside debating Michelle Steele's nomination and the National Defense Authorization Act, there was a lighter moment where Senator Grassley paid tribute to an Iowa student for her award-winning poetry on American patriotism.
But it was not all smooth sailing. The session saw intense partisan friction. Minority Leader Schumer strongly criticized the administration's handling of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act reauthorization and demanded full transparency regarding a recent memorandum of understanding with Iran.
It really highlights the ongoing tension between bipartisan defense work and deep political battles over national security oversight. Looking ahead, our listeners should watch out for how the Senate handles these high-profile nominations, particularly for the Department of Homeland Security and the Postal Service. Also, keep an eye on the budget reconciliation process and whether the proposed Commission on Reparations gets traction in the coming weeks.
That is all for today's Capital Catch-Up. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.